So the next question that Claudius asked was, does the internet influence politics? Yes, it does. Actually, I will focus on Germany here because there have been some strong evidence that the web is influencing politics. Um, First of all, transparency is a thing that I highlighted before in other questions or in other answers already, and it's becoming more and more relevant for politicians also. The web was not available when Helmut Kohl, former German chancellor, said, "Was gebe ich auf mein Geschwätz von gestern?" It's a literal citation, and a translation would be, "Who cares about what I said before the election?" So he promised something on the election, and the day after, he wouldn't remind or wouldn't want to know about it, and says, "Who cares?" And it's a paradigm of how politicians worked. So they said, "Oh, people forget. People they just don't remember what was on," and this is changing. Transparency is becoming more and more available for people, which means that our former Minister of Defense, Karl Theodor zu Gutenberg, when he had problems with his dissertation, when people said, "Hey, you didn't cite this and you didn't cite that," first of all, it was only 3 or I don't know, or 9, only a handful of citation errors that were in Süddeutsche Zeitung. And when he first came up with this statement, he said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. My dissertation is perfect." And the problem that he had was that he, as a politician, didn't have the transparency that the web already had during this statement. When he gave this statement, the people on the web had already investigated on his dissertation and found out that a lot more than these 3 citation problems occurred. Like, I think it was already 20 or 30 problems that occurred. And if he had known that, he wouldn't have thought that he could just walk away with just trying to turn this problem down. And somebody wrote, which I thought was very interesting, there is a small elite who looks from the future to what politicians do today. So what your question was, does the internet influence politics? Yes, it does. And politicians have to find out what the web knows about the topic that they are talking about. And it's a very complex thing for them because they have to do the statements and people will measure their statements, but they have to take into account much more information than they do today. Yesterday people thought, oh, what's on the mass newspapers is what people know, but that's not true today anymore. Everybody can perform a Google search and find new and more information, and people do. And so transparency and reliability is a criteria that will be more and more important for politicians, in my opinion, in the future. And a lot of these politicians don't know that yet or didn't accept that yet, and they'll have to adopt to that sooner that they want. Yeah, what you also can see is that the web is very fast, and does the internet influence politics? In this case, with Karl Theodor zu Gutenberg, I would say that the web has kicked him out of his position. So there were people who were jointly, it's a kind of the wisdom of the masses. Crowdsourcing is what you call that. There were hundreds of people who investigated on each and every page of his dissertation to find out if his citations were correct or not. And that's a big problem for politicians, in my opinion. And the best cure that they have is to start telling the truth.